It is currently 1 a.m. in the night or in the early morning. I need to be at work at 5. So I have 4 hours and I have not even started filming this video. This is what we call dedication. Hi and welcome back to my channel. This is Florence and this is the One More Book podcast. I promised you a video every 2 days in December and I am failing terribly. Let's just say life is lifing as usual. There's just a lot to do, there's work, but a promise is a debt. So I am back and today I'm going to talk about all the books that I have read in 2025 that were 5 stars for me. I have to do a caveat before this, just to let you know that why do I choose books to be 5 stars? How do I rate my book as 5 stars? To me, 5-star books are those books that I feel were written for me. That's a very individualistic thing, but that's just how these books made me feel. So I would not actually recommend these books 100% for you to read them because they spoke to me. I normally would recommend my 4-star reads because I feel like those are just good on a level, on a ground level. But 5 stars to me means that they spoke to me. They just spoke to me. Please share with me your 5-star reads, books that you would want to be buried with, because that's how I feel about some of these books. Share with me in the comments. I'd love to know which ones they are. And if you've read some of these, also let me know in the comment section. First, we have Black Skin, White Mask by Frantz Fanon. And this book was originally published in French in 1952. And it's a book that stands on a foundational text in anti-colonial thought, psychological approaches to race and understanding of post-colonial identity formation. It's definitely not an easy read. I read it, I did an immersive read, so I listened to it while also reading the physical copy, which I borrowed. This is actually not my copy, but I'm hoping to get myself a copy that I can write in. But I found the book, in as much as it was difficult to read, I found it to be very healing. What are the effects of racism on a person's psyche? Using his own life experience and from his work as a psychoanalyst, Fanon explores just how colonialism affects its subject, how these subjects internalize its prejudices to a point that they develop the white masks that their oppressors have. Like they, in turn, it's like they're mirroring what they're seeing happening. And this book answers so many questions that I never even thought to ask or knew to ask, especially about racism and how it affects us. This is like a foundational tool for our existence as people of color or Black people, especially those who are affected by colonialism or who are living in a country where they are the minority. This is so important. I also want to get a copy of The Wretched of the Earth, his other book, because that's also so good and so important. So those are the books that I have on my to-buy list in 2026. Africa is Not a Country, Breaking Stereotypes of Modern Africa by Dipo Faloyin is an eye-opening and very engaging exploration of the African continent. It challenges the simplistic and often stereotypical and very, simple view that many people hold about Africa as this single homogeneous entity. Through his very witty and insightful and very well-researched writing, Dipo Faloyin dismantles this idea or this myth that Africa can be reduced to one country or one uniform experience. That makes no sense. I absolutely loved reading this book. I was lucky because when I went to the Arcade Book and Art Festival, he was there, so he signed my copy. Totally a 5-star read. Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. This is my latest 5-star read, and I am probably singing to the choir when I say that this book is so good. It's set in the 1930s, and it's written in the 1930s and also based in the 1930s, just around the time when the Harlem Renaissance had ended. And in this book, we follow a young black woman called Jenny Crawford, and she's living in the South. And somehow this is a woman who has always known that there is more to life out there than what she's experiencing, and she makes it her purpose to go out there and find it. And through a very beautiful narration, Jenny gives us a history of her life and her quest for blossom, for flowers, for blooming, for love, self-discovery, for music. She takes us along with her as she tries to find herself, her self-love, despite encountering several intense pressures of racism, of sexism, of colorism in her own community. This book is a masterclass for me on self-discovery and self-love. I mean, this book for me is worth 100 self-help books. There's a love story in it, but to me it felt like a love story between Janine and herself. Like, in as much as there were partners in the book, but to me it felt like she learned about herself. She discovered about herself. She learned to love herself. It's just an absolute masterpiece in writing. This is Kindred by Octavia Butler. An absolutely beautiful read. Throughout history, in literature, we read about how marginalized or oppressed groups are often the ones who are in the position, or they have this morality backbone that makes them want to be the saviors of society. They're the ones who have to redeem or educate their oppressor or repair a broken world. This expectation, which is a kind of burden of empathy and endurance, is placed disproportionately on those who are already suffering. And somehow the oppressed must not only fight for their own survival, but they must also redeem others or rescue others. And in this book, we meet Dana, a modern black woman. She's a writer living in LA in 1976 with her husband. And she is suddenly and repeatedly pulled back into time, into the antebellum South, where she must save a life, the life of Rufus. Rufus, who turns out to be a white settler's son who somehow is an ancestor of Dana. So each time she saves him, she also ensures that there's a continued existence of her own family line. So in short, Dana must save both herself and also the system that oppresses her. I absolutely love this book because it brought up so many thoughts in me, just even in today's context, where I feel like we keep on feeding the very same systems that are consuming us. It made me wonder, when will we ever recognize that these capitalistic and exploitative systems that are driving ecological collapse, inequality, and alienations are the same systems that feel impossible to escape from, because they provide us with some sort of progress. But this progress is at our own and at the planet's expense. When will we ever realize that? And when will we ever stop? This book just brought up so many thoughts, and I absolutely loved it. This is Women's Liberation and the African Freedom Struggle by Thomas Sankara. Thomas Sankara was a revolutionary leader of Burkina Faso who was also an advocate for both women's rights and for social justice. And this book, which is based on his speech, a speech that he gave during the Women's Day celebration, International Women's Day celebration, which is usually in March 8th of March. This was in 1987, where he reiterated and acknowledged the full participation of women at the forefront of the fight for freedom. And he was just like, if women are not free, then there is actually no freedom. Like, women have let us put women's freedom and their rights at the forefront, because without that, there is actually no freedom. I absolutely love this book. It's short, but so significant. Nervous Conditions by Tsitsi Dangarembga is a modern classic in the African literary canon. It brings to the politics of decolonization theory the energy of women's rights, which is vital. I think for me, this book is sold to us as a coming of age story of a young girl growing up in rural Zimbabwe and her fight for a place in a patriarchal and colonized world. But it turns out to be a reflective look at Africa and its exploitation, both through colonialism and imperialism. I absolutely loved this thought when I was reading it, because there was a book content creator who actually guided me through this thought. She wrote a beautiful Substack about it. I will post a link in the description box, where she talks about women's struggles and the fight for women's freedom, especially during the fight against colonialism, but also about brain drain, something that we see happening. Africa is losing a lot of its people, young people who can invest their time, their energy, their knowledge into building Africa. But of course, because of corruption and just mismanagement that is happening in most African countries, neocolonialism, they move out into the West, and their energy and their time and their resources is wasted, or they use it to build the West instead of building back home. I loved this. I really did. Against the Loveless World by Susan Abulhawa is a book that is devastatingly beautiful. In this book, we follow a young woman called Naa as she sits in an Israeli prison. She is of Palestinian. She's a Palestinian, but she has been arrested and is in a prison for a very long time. So we follow her. She is sitting in this prison, but she is narrating to us her life. This book is heart-wrenching, heartbreaking, but so beautifully written. We are in Palestine with Naa, as in her childhood, when she grows up, the kind of life that she lives, her family, the food that they eat, the music, the sounds. She tells us about the Israeli invasion of Palestine, how her parents escaped, the fight, that the generational fight. This is a people who have been fighting. Actually, their existence, their resistance, their existence is the resistance. And she couldn't have written a more touching book. I absolutely love this book. Books and friendships and politics all together, and culture and music, all in this book. She sits in this cell and she is telling us her story, and I listened. Totally worth the 5-star. The Bandit Queens by Parini Shroff. This was a book club pick. I picked this up and of course we all loved it. This book to me can only be defined as a Trojan horse of a novel. It is thrilling and it is unexpectedly profound. When I picked this book up, I was expecting to read about a self-made widow in rural India who is enjoying her newfound freedom after her husband's death. But behind this chaos, this humorous chaos, is a sharp critique of patriarchy. We learn about sisterhood, about the injustice and the resilience of the injustice that is meted on women and the resilience of these women. Also, how the other women are now seeking the services of the main character because they also want their husbands to be disposed of. I absolutely laughed as I was reading this, but yeah, the themes were so deep, so traumatic, but she wrote it in such a way that you could laugh as you were reading it. A very powerful and unforgettable read that I 10 over 10 would recommend. Pachinko by Jin Lee is a profound multi-generational saga that delves into the complexities of identity, of family, and of survival against the backdrop of 20th century Korean and Japanese history. This book spans 4 generations, and it offers an intimate portrayal of the challenges faced by a Korean family as they are navigating discrimination, cultural clashes, and the pursuit of belonging in a foreign land. Absolutely, absolutely beautifully written and with so much history. I love me a good historical fiction book. This is so well written. Destined to Witness, Growing Up Black in Nazi Germany by Hans Johann Massaquoi is a beautifully written memoir that offers a rare and insightful perspective of how life was in Nazi Germany for a black child. Hans Massaquoi was born in 1926 to a German mother and a Liberian father. And Massaquoi is a very witty storyteller who challenges historical narratives and gives us a very nuanced understanding of race, of identity, and of survival during this era of Germany's darkest history. I absolutely enjoyed this book, and reading it reminded me of the writing style is like that of Trevor Noah's book, Born a Crime. There's a lot of similarities between the two. Absolutely, absolutely enjoyed reading this. A surprising 5-star read for me was Intermezzo by Sally Rooney. This is my first Sally Rooney book, my only so far, and it explores the complexities of family bonds, a familial bond, personal grief, and the intricate dance of human relationships. This is done through the lens of 2 brothers, Peter and Ivan, who have recently lost their father, and they're now navigating their strained relationship, romantic relationships that they are in, and this grief, dealing with this grief. Absolutely, absolutely well written. Ivan, I loved the characters. I still remember the characters. The women got the short end of the stick in this book, but all in all, it is so beautifully written. I listened to it as an audiobook, but also like I did an immersive read. So I didn't, because I've heard people say that Sally Rooney writes without punctuations. So I don't know, I didn't really see that because I think I was listening and flipping through at the same time. All in all, an absolute banger. Yeah. And I'm really, really hoping to get and read Normal People, which comes very highly recommended by her. This is Der Letzte Himmel by Alena Jabarine. It translates to The Last Sky or The Final Sky, My Search for Palestine. I attended a book reading and the discussion of this book. I'd not read it before I went for the book reading. And Alena Jabarine is a Palestinian author. She's a journalist. And she was in conversation with Kubra Gumuse, who is also an author. She's of Turkish descent. And just listening to the conversation, it really stirred something deep in me, a quiet reckoning, a reminder that having a voice in a safe land, like where I live now, is both a gift and a duty, especially when you're living in a land that turns away from those who are crying out of breath. And sometimes even the lands or the countries that we live in are actually causing so much pain and suffering. So it also widened my sense of what resistance means now. Resistance is not always loud, but it is rooted in knowing who I am, what I stand for, and where my strength lies. I also need to know the hands that hold me. It's rooted also in the truths that I carry, in the choice to not only endure but to live while also resisting. I think for me, resistance, that word it earned a new meaning for me. It now means the search for answers about questions on learning, on growing in solidarity. How do we live, and how do we not only survive, how do we thrive wherever we are, in whichever situation we find ourselves? As we think about those whose existence is actually resistant. People who are in Congo, people who are in Sudan, people in Yemen, people in Palestine, people all over the world who, just by existing, that's just how they are resisting. Important book at this really, really crucial time that we are living in. Changes, a love story by Ama Ata Aidoo. This is a compelling exploration of modern African womanhood, delving into themes such as marriage, independence, and societal expectations within post-colonial Ghana. We meet Essie, a modern Ghanaian woman who decides to divorce her husband and enter into a subsequent relationship with Ali Konde, a very charismatic businessman who is already married. I loved how this book offered us a diverse perspective on women's roles and choices in contemporary African society, while it also examined the intersection between tradition and modernity by highlighting the challenges that women face in balancing their personal desires and societal norms. I love just how Essie went for what she wanted. She knew what she wanted and she went for it. Sometimes she failed, sometimes she succeeded, but she went for it. I loved the confidence that she exuberated. Yeah, I wish I could have more. I wish we could all have more of that. Essie is a heroine. This is Homegoing by Yaa Gyasi. I mean, Homegoing, 5-star, always. So this is a reread for me. I read it the first time in 2020. Then I did a buddy read this year. And it's a historical fiction book which begins with the story of two sisters, Ephia and Essie in 18th century Ghana. This book, in an extraordinary way, captures the complexities of family, of identity, and of history in a way that is both intimate but also far-reaching. It takes us on a journey that goes round and comes back to the beginning. Absolutely, absolutely love it. I think everyone loves Homegoing. Definitely still will always be a 5-star read for me. A Kind of Madness by Uche Okonkwo is a collection of short stories which is beautifully written, and is set in Nigeria, and it explores familial strife and the struggle of survival in just a normal way in an African country. I loved it. Every story was just interesting and different and fresh. I love the fresh feeling of reading this. There's a one-eyed chicken. There's a chimpanzee who has been forgotten in a cage. There's a tormented daughter searching for a link to a past life. Just totally different stories, but all so well done. A very beautiful collection. Next is Ashata, an autobiography that I read with the No Name Reads book club in Berlin, the Berlin chapter. So I traveled to Berlin for book discussion. This is a banned book that is timeless and full of lessons. The timelessness of this book reveals that the struggle that Black people go through all over the world still persist even now, something that is very, very heartbreaking. And Ashata has given us a blueprint. Let's just call it a blueprint on how to not only to survive, but to revolutionize. She radicalizes us in her words and teaches us how to thrive. She calls for community. She insists on community in the fight against capitalism, against racism. She speaks against inequalities even within the revolution. Like nobody is above critique. I absolutely enjoyed reading this book. So important. I read it as an ebook, but I want to get the physical copy. They're just very expensive at the moment. But I hope to maybe get myself a copy for my birthday next year. The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde is a classic in which Oscar Wilde is literally and figuratively holding up a mirror for us as a society to look at ourselves. I never knew that I could enjoy reading a classic. I didn't grow up reading these classics when I was growing up in Kenya. So reading these, I borrowed this book from a copy from my library, but I'm going to get myself one. These are my thoughts. These are just how I put my thoughts about this book. First of all, Dorian Gray, the person, is completely overrated and so self-absorbed. Like, I couldn't handle him. That was just on another level. I prefer commoners. As a commoner myself, I actually prefer commoners. Lord Henry is terribly insufferable. I think that's why I prefer commoners. Another thought is, let's just do away with all the men in this book. Well, apart from the brother, let's keep him. But the rest, let's do away with all of them. The painter in this book, really spineless. I don't like spineless men. Really spineless. I also understand why this book is a classic, because the writing was just so beautiful. You could just eat it all up. I ate it all up. Also, these men are so annoying. But at the end of the book, I enjoyed justice. Justice at last. A classic that I would love to read again. And it's made me want to read more classics because, yeah, there's no right time. The right time is now to start reading classics. Emperor of Gladness by Ocean Vuong. Another 5-star. I read his other book, On Earth We Are Briefly Gorgeous. Absolutely loved it. When I heard he was coming to, he just released this new book and he was coming to Hamburg for a book tour, I had to get it. This book is about an unusual friendship that develops between a young Asian man and an old woman after their somewhat chance meeting at a bridge in a small town called East Gladness. This is a town that is in Connecticut. It's actually real. And this is a town that is described as a town where nothing happens, where people actually live so that they can experience something. How can someone write so beautifully? Like, the characters in this book, they tug at your heart. The values that he speaks about, they make you want to take up in arms and fight for them. The town, this is a town where the forgotten lived, those who stay behind. Most of the time, people don't talk about those who stay behind. It's always someone who's made it out, but we forget about the wingless in the community, how they stay behind and how they thrive and how they thrive in community, the importance of community. I absolutely enjoyed this book. Highly, highly recommend. Anything by Ocean Vuong, I will get it. I will buy it. If Beale Street Could Talk by James Baldwin is a celebration of Black love in the midst of a racist America. Set in Harlem, the story follows two young lovers, Trish and Fonny, who are childhood friends, and now they find themselves in love and engaged. But their future is threatened when Fonny is arrested for a crime. This is an enchanting work of fiction. I am happy that this is my first read by James Baldwin and I loved it. The story is heartbreaking, but it's also very intriguing. It's a short book, and it kept me entertained. I don't want to use the word entertain. It held me all throughout, from the first page to the last. I found myself rooting for the young lovers, even though I knew that they were fighting a system that was built to destroy them. But still, I still felt like I had to root for them and hope that everything turns out well. Such a beautiful book. Sad, heartbreaking, but also very, very beautiful. A memoir that I read and loved is Finding Me by Viola Davis. I'm so late to the party. This memoir was raw, unflinching, and deeply inspiring as we follow Viola's journey from extreme poverty, growing up in Rhode Island, how she overcomes childhood trauma to become an EGOT winning actress, an amazing wife and mother. She was very vulnerable in this book. She held nothing back and was brutally honest. She is resilient, she is disciplined, and she is willing to fight for what she believes in. And she just, like, she's that girl. She's not going to be defined by her circumstances, and she goes for what she believes in. I absolutely enjoyed reading this book. I listened to the audiobook version, which is narrated by Viola Davis. 5 stars, 5 star, 5 star. The narration, 5 star. But I'm going to get a physical copy because I borrowed my friend's copy and it had pictures inside it. I want to get my own copy because I love the pictures. I love books that have pictures in them. Next is The History of the World in 6 Plagues, How Contagion, Class and Captivity Shaped Us from Cholera to COVID-19 by Edna Bonholm. I found the book's title intriguing, but I was a bit worried. I was worried that it was going to be too scientific and too dry for an unscience person like me. But this book really surprised me. It turned out to be intriguing in the way in which the author is very reflective as she draws a comparison between how epidemics occur, where they occur, how they start, who is affected by them, what measures are put in place in the fight, how they affect us, what we learn from them, or if we ever learn from them. Research, there was a lot going on, but I just love how she connected it to racism. Yeah, an important book. I absolutely loved reading it. It opened up, there's so much history that was put into this book. She really took her time, so well researched. I mean, she's extra over qualified, and you can tell that in this book. I really enjoyed reading it. A light read that I enjoyed is Real by Kennedy Ryan. It's a love story between an upcoming actress, I think she's called Nova, and an acclaimed film director that blossoms when she's cast for this role as a lead in like an upcoming biopic of film about this, I believe, Desi Blue, a forgotten black jazz musician from the Harlem Renaissance time. And during all this, a forbidden romantic relationship develops between them, while in the background, Nova, the female main character, is struggling with a secret deteriorating health issue. And all of this plays in tandem with the retelling of Desi Blue's story. I just loved how much care Kennedy Ryan puts while she is writing these books. It's not just about the romance. There's always a underlying issue that she goes into. Like, she puts so much, it's thoughtful. The way she writes is thoughtful and respectful, and there's no like cliches that you find in other romance stories, like miscommunication. I don't know. It's just, I love how she does it. So well researched and just mature. I love that. I love that about her books. And Real was a good one. Real was a good one. And last but not least is The World Was in Our Hands, Voices from the Boko Haram Conflict, edited by Chitra Nagarayan. And this is a series of compelling interviews of about 47 individuals who are affected by the ongoing Boko Haram insurgency in the Lake Chad region, especially in northeastern Nigeria. In the book, the interviewees include abducted women, soldiers, community leaders, government employees of various ages, from young to like a 90-year-old. And the themes that are come up in this book include patriarchy, economic hardship, climate change, corruption, gender roles, and all these provide a very nuanced understanding of the crisis. It is, for me, I felt like this book is a reminder to give voice, or like give the microphone to the people who are affected. Let them tell us their own story. It's so important, so that we are from the outside. Let us not use our privilege or our power, but let them, the people who are affected, tell us about their story. We need to listen to them. And I can't, it's sad to say, it's not even normal to say I enjoyed this book. It is just an important book. That's just it. It's important. That's it. That's what makes it a 5-star read to me. Very, very important. Yeah, so those are all my 5-star reads of 2025. There's one more. There is one more that I feel like is in contention for to be a 5-star read, but I still have 20 days to go, so I might just slip in one more. Let's see. But those are the 5-star reads that I have read and completed and loved. Are there any that you have read? I hope they gave you some inspiration. Maybe you can find them. Maybe, I can inspire you so that you also read them. But I'm always also very, very willing to hear from your side. So let me know if there are ones that were 5-star reads for you that you recommend to me. Write them in the comment section below. And thank you so much for watching. I need to go to bed. And see you in my next video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And see you soon.